Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review episode 5 of Utopia. So, going into this episode, I'll be honest, not a big fan of this episode. Kind of feels like a filler kind of episode. For this really just being not a weekly thing, but just like, hey, here's all this stuff. Watch it in one fell swoop of a gulp of a whatever, because basically the show is already done now. Yeah, this episode just kind of feels like a filler episode where they're just kind of biding for time, where we really just go on and have like these characters that don't have to go very far to go and do anything. So with this episode, there's kind of very few things to talk about here. So really, for spoilers, for spoilers in cryptic sense, there's not much for cryptic sense here. It's really just an episode I just don't like. I just don't enjoy. Um, Really, just a very slow to the crawl of an episode. So we seemingly are to find out who is to have families in this episode. Um, we kind of have certain characters that don't really have any kind of ties or connections, and so really we just find out that they are not having problems at their families, their places, their whatevers. But it seems that also talking about family seems to be kind of the theme of this episode, if anything. We have Kevin going on and talking to his son, um, talking about how at one point there seemed to be another brother in the mix, that there was going to be a twin between Thomas, and it seems that that twin didn't quite work out, but I'll go in more specifics in the spoilers. We also kind of have like the rebuttal going on from previous episodes going on here, where we're kind of having this like recapping, where Ian is kind of recapping us and what all he's done so far. We're having Kevin kind of recapping technically what had happened to Kara in the last episode. Just seems like a lot of recapping going on. But on the Michael side of things, we seem to have him wanting to uh, give this vaccine to Charlotte and see how that works out. And so, really, we have, of course, this uh, this moment of the story feeling like a little bit of a switcheroo kind of thing with eventually once we get to Charlotte. And we go on, and what like Charlotte ends up becoming in this show, let's just say in a very cryptic like sense, really don't enjoy it overall. But the thing that I do like is the more and more we get further into this show, the more Michael is to start to become a little bit more skeptical about things and is to be second guessing things. And I like that. I like definitely how Michael is to all of a sudden just be like, well, let me go and let me just look at this cabinet. Let me go and look at this fridge. Let me go and let me double think things and just make sure that like I've crossed the T's and dotted the I's to make sure that the show must go on kind of thing, or the show isn't what it seems to be here. But we'll get into that when we get into further episodes and kind of wrap this show up. Um, Kind of giving a little bit away, but at the end of the day, this show is almost over anyways. Um, and so after this is to like we're almost there. So dare say, more than likely, for Utopia, the UK show, uh, I'm hoping to keep going on to that. It seems if views keep going the way they are, seemingly, if it's a series that people keep coming back to, the UK version might be something that I might go into also. It just depends on just real, just seemingly viewership. Uh, like as well as anything, if there is a bunch of videos that all got zeros, then I wouldn't be here doing this series. But luckily, some people have gone on and watched this, so thank you. I really do appreciate it. So with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into that double five, because it's otherwise that time yet again to go into that spoiler. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this episode. So in the very beginning of this episode, we are to just kind of find out where everybody is to be at, because we end up finding out that Grant on the news is to be a mass murderer, supposedly killing Karen or Kara and a number of her family members. So we all of a sudden go on and have certain characters like Ian and Wilson starting to look up their family members to check if they're still alive. And Ian is to find out that his parents are killed. Uh, really, it says that there was some accident or some, but they were killed. Let's be real here. Wilson is to find out that his family was to be killed in the gas leak because he couldn't have bothered to go inside of his house to check that his family was still alive. So Wilson is just kind of very frustrated with Jessica because of like, hey, like you couldn't have bothered to tell me that my family was dead. Like you knew and you couldn't have bothered to tell me that my family was dead. So Becky didn't look up anybody. Becky didn't look up a thing really because we find out that Becky has no one. Becky's on her own. And so we we go on here and we have, of course, Grant now being called out as a mass murderer, and so there's a bunch of posters saying that Grant is a killer, like caution, whichever. So really, when Grant has to go out here, because he has to go out because Jessica is telling him, it's like, hey, like we need the rest of Utopia. Like, give me the rest of Utopia. Tell me where the location of this place is. And Grant's like, I don't know. Like, I can't tell you the exact location. And she's like, well, if I tortured you, will you know? And so he's like, no. Like, I still have to physically show you where this is, where this place is. And then I would easily be able to tell you. So we eventually have Ian and Becky go into this bathroom. And then all of a sudden we have Becky, who is having this seizure here. And so Ian is putting her in this tub with him and kind of like trying to control Becky's seizure. So we go on and we have all of a sudden Ian talking about horoscopes and certain connecting signs. And we have Ian kind of mad about how, like, his sign is technically tied to him being a certain kind of person. He's like, no, like that, no, that's not it. That's not me at all. So, and that his horoscope is telling him to be tied to some Tauros, which actually isn't Becky, because I think Becky is a Pisces, or one of them is one of them is a Pisces. So but we go on here and we end up having these characters just kind of uh, like Becky's kind of comforting Ian because his family is technically dead, and she's like, you know what, you should go off and you should see if they're still alive. And Ian's like, no, what's the point? Like, Ian has gone on and buried so many people and has like possibly been tied to so many murders at this point that like why go back home? Like what is he really to go back to at this point? And so Becky's like cubicles and commissions. like Ian just like Ian didn't really have a life, and so like his family being dead it just like makes it even more that he still doesn't have a life. It's even worse. And so really that's a bulk of what really happens through that. Um, because all of these people are to go on to this new place that I guess Jessica is to have weirdly the code to get into, and so evidently they're to be these rich people, and so Wilson, of course, when we get into this house, Wilson's like, man, like how is it that these rich people have like so much stuff? Like, why do they need to have so much stuff? So we go on and we have Ian talking to Thomas, transitioning here. So we have Kevin talking to Thomas and mentioning that before Thomas would have been a twin, but I guess Thomas's twin wasn't strong enough, and so unfortunately Thomas is just by the only child, and so if Thomas would have had a twin, more than likely he would be where Thomas would be where Charlotte is. And so Kevin is kind of upset about the whole Kara situation, and Kara's Kara to Kevin, it's like she's been with us for a very long time. She's been a part of this company for a long time. Like she's been my assistant since grad school, and so on and so forth. Like Kevin's been to uh, like so many family get-togethers with Kara and so on and so forth. And Thomas goes and tells Kevin, it's like, well, she was rejecting the program, like hence why, like we just decided to just pull the plug on her, and this was the best way to do so. So now we transition to, of course, have Michael, who is kind of putting uh, a thermometer to Charlotte, and she's having a temperature of 100.5 or 105 point something. And so, like, man, like she's getting worse. She's getting the T rash. Uh, or no, wait, she doesn't get the T rash just yet, but she'll get there. Um, and so we end up having Warwick, who's telling Michael, it's like, well, hey, like, should we give her the vaccine? Like, you have the vaccine, right? Why don't you just give it to her? And Michael's like, well, like, it doesn't work that way. But he's like, you know what? Let's do it. Like, let's give her the vaccine. Even though we're not ready, like, we'll just give it to her. And so Michael leaves to go and get some nurse so that way he can put in the vaccine. And so that leads us to have Warwick go and have a Charlotte twin come in and have her, of course, have this last meal. And then everybody's like, ooh, last meal. And so we have these twins who's eating all these like crab and lobster and champagne and all these foods and stuff like that. And so we go on and Kevin arrives and's hugging both Charlottes. And so he's going on and saying like, well, which one wants to live? Which one wants to be the one that gets the T rash and dies? And so really we go by like a goofy eeny meeny miny mo. Uh, and so the girl who of course is to already have looked like she was sick is to end up being sick. So we go and we give this girl the T rash, and because it's the purest form of this illness, this flu. So we go on, and Stearns is to come back with the nurse to give her the vaccine. And so then they switch the bodies and they kill the other Charlotte off. And so Dale is having some withdrawals of course, killing his daughter because he's like, yeah, I've had her for so long, and like she's my daughter, she's been my daughter for so long, and I can't just let her go. And so now the other Charlotte is telling her dad, it's like, well, like what did you do today to earn your place in the crowded world? And so Dale's like, I murdered a child. And he's like, she's like, no, like what did you do today to earn your place in the crowd? So forcing him to say like that he sacrificed for the greater good, and that what they're doing is the right thing. But Dale is really having the problem with that, the problem seeing that. So we go on and we have, of course, Michael come back to realize that now this girl is way better and it makes no sense. Like heads and toes better. Like it seems like she still has a wildly high temperature, which is like 100 and something, which I'm like, okay, like so she's still sick. Like she's still like she's not 100.5, but still like she's 100 and something, or 100 point something. Um, Man, that's still kind of high, but I guess it's not deathly high, I guess. So we have, of course, Michael go into his lab and he's like, oh my god, like this is like working so much better than I could have thought. And so Michael is calling Colleen and telling her this, that like, yeah, my vaccine is going so well. And Colleen is like, oh my god. So we have, of course, now after, or we have, of course, that the end of day, just I've out. So Warwick is wanting to tell everybody that they have this cure, they've cured this flu, and so he's going out there and he's like showboating that his daughter is better, and Michael is like, whoa, 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 we don't want to tell everybody just yet. Like, this is basically like a slam dunk like thing. So we have, of course, Warwick and Charlotte going out there and like, look, we found a cure. And the protesters are like, oh my god, like this is like the cure of it all. So like we've cured everything. Everything's secure now. So whatever. Anyways, so I messed up. It is what it is. So we go on and we all of a sudden have the FDA, Tony Templar coming in and like, you know what? I don't really believe all of this just yet. Like I can't really just say that this is all of a sudden a Wamidine like cure. This makes no sense, because Tony doesn't believe what they're doing here, and so because this stuff isn't extensively tested, so we have, of course, Thomas, who's gearing up for these vaccines to be shipped out. So we all of a sudden have this Tony character that it's kind of like, let's wait and see here. But so the FDA is coming and trying to do this press conference that is like with these protesters and these news people. And so Michael is just going on and desperately wanting, of course, this Tony character to go on and release this vaccine. And so all of a sudden we have Kevin Christie who comes in here with his foghorn, uh, or with his kind of horn of sorts, and he's going on and megaphone, whatever the device is that has the it's not like a microphone, but it's like a thing. Uh, anyways, pushing on. So Kevin goes and is to desperately plead to the FDA to release this vaccine and to kind of beg and plead on their knees to free this vaccine, to save these kids, so that they don't die anymore, and so on and so forth. And so everybody just gets on their hands and knees to the FDA to release this vaccine for them to ship out this order. Weirdly of all, like we also had weirdly all these bunnies that are in these crates somewhere. Didn't know what all that meant, but like that was the weird ending of the show. So now that that's all covered and over with, luckily for me, uh, we now transition, of course, to what is the next thing? Grant and Jessica making it uh, to Alice's house. So Alice and Kim are at their house and they are seeing on the news that Grant was to be a mass murderer. And so they go on and they call the police to mention that Grant had lived there for X number of days. And so we end up, of course, having this juvie police officer coming in there. We have seemingly a number of police officers coming in there, and they're trying to like file reports and talk about what's going on here. So all of a sudden, we have Arby coming in here and just shooting through all of these people, and then he shoots Kim, leaving Alice to just kind of mourn for Kim for a little bit. But we end up having Arby then looking at Alice and telling her, like, be quiet, please. Like, I'm sorry, she's mourning over her basically mother's death, and you're telling her to be quiet. So Arby goes on and has Alice go and sit down somewhere by the kitchen. And so then Arby weirdly just starts to make lunch, a bagged lunch of sorts, like a PB and J and all kinds of stuff. So Arby starts reading this comic book and is to read the pages of Utopia, and so Grant and Jessica show up. We have this fight out between both Jessica and Grant. Um, Before they get here, it seems that Jessica was trying to hide Grant from these police officers, so they end up going into a bar and hide, uh, seemingly in front of this little arcade game. So now Jessica and Arby are fighting it out, and it seems inevitable that Arby is going to win this fight. But Arby is to go on here and say that he was supposed to do these things. He was supposed to uh, find Jessica Hyde, find Utopia, and so on and so forth. And he doesn't want to do that anymore. So really, he goes on and is to give Jessica these Utopia pages, and he's like, you should probably eat before you read these pages because you won't want to eat after these pages are done. So we coincidentally find that Arby and Jessica have the exact same gun. I'm like, I wonder why. Probably because the prop guy like didn't have much of an exchange of guns, I guess, or maybe Jessica got this gun from the same some odd person. So we, at the end of this, just have Arby telling Jessica that they should also probably leave soon, because others will probably come, especially if numerous people are to be dead at this point. So Arby eventually tells Jessica, it's like, hey, like if you ever need me, I'll be there, kind of thing. So we start to see a change in Arby. We start to realize that maybe uh, Arby possibly seeing the death of Alice's reaction of Kim's death. Um, let me back that up. Let me re-say that again. Maybe Arby seeing Alice's reaction to Kim's death was the triggering thing for Arby to finally say, you know what, like, I feel like I'm done here. Possibly for him, he's killed too many people, and before he was to say that he was okay with it, but maybe he eventually draws the line somewhere, because we've seen him kill Monica, we've seen him technically kill a kid, but like, I don't know what it is with like Arby not wanting to kill this one kid. Not quite sure, but anyways, so with that said, I think that kind of wraps up this episode. Because really, that's how it's kind of leaving off with Arby leaving Jessica here, and that's really what happens for the rest of this episode. Kind of very short, really not very detailed of an episode, but it seems like they were kind of really just stretching this one compared to all the others. So, with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, bye.